Americans think of in terms of space. We think in terms of highways, suburbs, trucks, farms, subdivisions, interstate travel, open land. And Europeans think in terms of trains, um, borders, short flights, dense cities, cramped flats, which is their word for like an apartment, and countries packed tight. Okay, they're right next to each other. And in Europe, a person can hop on a budget airline and fly from one country to another for the price of a dinner. Okay. And in America, it would take you 12 hours just to drive from El Paso to Beaumont. You see? So in Europe, Europe doesn't have unlimited farmland. They don't have unlimited energy, housing, the roads. There's not that the open land is not like that. So much of Europe's land is already shaped by cities and roads and farms. And that means Europe is not dealing with any empty space, okay, waiting to be developed. It's dealing with old neighborhoods, expensive housing, tight streets, aging infrastructure, and limited energy resources and public services that are stressed. And so here's the thing. They're also dealing with a migration problem, okay? I'm not talking about immigration. I'm talking about people just migrating there. They're dealing with large numbers of people arriving quickly from the global south, okay? And pressure doesn't look, the pressure doesn't fall on unused land. It falls directly on those apartments and schools and hospitals and police departments and welfare offices and public transit and neighborhoods that were never built to absorb that rapid number of that number of people. And this is why migration has become one of the central political battles in Europe. They are crowded, okay? They are hostile, right? It's a hostile takeover by illegal immigrants from the global south. African, Arab countries, they are just migrating. 2024, okay? 919,000 European Union citizens were found to be illegally present in the EU. That's an extra million people. Okay, keep in mind, you can push all those countries into the state of Texas. So that's just how little that space is. Think about that. Now, France, the EU also issued. They said that they issued like 500,000 orders for people to leave, and they still won't go. And the continent is struggling to decide who has the right to remain and who's got to go and how to get them out of there. And so Europeans themselves are now saying out loud what many Americans call extremists for saying years ago. Okay, they got to go. They're basically saying it's a migrant invasion. They got to go. Shut the borders down. Now, again, along with this massive influx of people, you have a lot of criminality. Okay, rapid migration, failed assimilation, concentrated poverty, weak deportation systems, organized struggling, cultural separation. Europe is dealing with real violence, real fear, real street disorder. I want to put something in perspective with you. Sexual violence. Okay, there's a Eurostat reported that in 2024, police recorded 256,302 sexual violence offenses in the EU, including 98,190 grapes. Can you imagine if they had that many grapes inside the state of Texas? That's what I want you to understand. Imagine if they had 98,000 grapes in the state of Texas. And I'm not talking about the grapes that you make grape juice with. You understand? Now, compare with 2023, that sexual violence offense, it rose 5%, and the grape rate rose 7%. And so over the decade from 2014 to 2024, the recorded SA or violence in the EU increased 94% in 10 years. Can you imagine that? Imagine you got an 8-year-old daughter, and from the time she was 8 to the time let's say she's 18 now, the threat against her personhood and her body has increased that much. We're talking about 150%. It is literally not safe for those women to walk down the street. In July 2024, England and Wales police chiefs described violence against women and girls as a national emergency. Think about that. We're not talking about drugs. We're not talking about shooting. You got a bunch of people over here, and the women are not safe. You can't let them do anything. They can't go anywhere. You see, the House of Commons Library reported that violence against women and girls makes up 20% of all recorded crime in Wales and England. And the police recorded that rape and sexual assault offenses against women and girls increased 264% from 2009 to 2024. You understand what these folk are dealing with? This is so when they come over. Hey, there was an incident that happened in Germany on New Year's Eve in 2025. 1,000 women in 2015. 1,000 women were sexually assaulted in Cologne, Germany, by groups of men that they identified as refugees or undocumented migrants from North Africa and the Middle East. This is what these people are going through. And so when they come over here, right, just the sheer safety alone that they feel. And it's everywhere, whether we're talking about France, whether we're talking about Germany, Great Britain. You see, this is what these people are dealing with. And see, that's the modern face of European disorder. Not just as, we're not talking about just a stranger in the alley. We're talking about organized abuse, online coordination, weak detection, and victims who may never receive justice. This is what they're dealing with. Look, Sweden. We always talk about Sweden. For you guys who don't know, Sweden, Norway, etc. The Vikings, right? That's where they are. Top of Sweden was sold as the model. They were generous with their welfare. They have these progressive values, this open migration. They have a high trust, peaceful street situation going. Now the Swedish police have identified about 62,000 people active in or connected to criminal networks. You see, including 14,000 active participants. In other words, they got 14,000 crooks and criminals doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Reuters reported that deadly shootings in Sweden more than tripled over the past decade. In 2023, Sweden had 9 times more deadly shootings than Norway, Denmark, Finland combined. And Swedish officials described their criminal networks as system threatening, involving violence, and they actually silence witnesses. They threaten social workers. They infiltrate authorities and political parties, traffic, drugs, scams, elderly. This is what these people are doing over there. You understand what I'm saying? And look, we all have heard about what's going on in this knife fighting. And that's just not something we can conceptualize here in America because we have guns. Somebody type CDL in the chat. A concealed carry license. Somebody type concealed carry license in the chat room. We packing over here, and we're not talking about knives, okay? But the Office of National Statistics reported that 49,151 knife or sharp instrument offenses in the year ending in December 2025. Can you imagine that? This is what's going on. These are tiny little countries. You understand? England is not that big. And here's the cold part. That was down from the year before where there was nearly 50,000 recorded knife incidents. You understand what I'm saying? And the same issues happening in Paris. These people do not feel safe. And so that's why I want you to just picture this. So shout out to William Lynch. So this is why some Europeans and tourists, they don't experience urban life as glamorous. They don't feel safe in crowds. Their experiences as a constant. They have to constantly be vigilant. Your phone, your bag, your flashy jewelry. You know, don't get distracted. Don't leave the cafe. Don't leave them on the table. Don't walk like a tourist. Don't let anybody get too close. That's what Americans need to understand. When Europeans come here and react like the U.S. is a breath of fresh air, they're reacting to countries where a woman can walk into a restaurant with a nice purse and sunglasses and not automatically feel like every eye in the room is calculating on how to snatch them from her.